Things like this that happen every day.
Howdy, gang. It's Uncle Todd here. We're once again heading into the Weird West. This week it's The Star Packer from 1934, starring a very young baby-faced John Wayne. This film was one of a few series he did in the early 30s during his salad days. Of course, his first on-screen break was The Big Trail by Raoul Walsh, but that film, which was, I think, the first 70 millimeter, was a bomb. Mostly due that nobody was going to put in the equipment to show it when they already had to have put in equipment for sound films. So Wayne then became a free agent, and he then made a series of short westerns for Leon Schlesinger, who produced the Looney Tunes cartoons. And these were basically, they took the plots and action footage from old Ken Maynard's silent westerns, filmed new sound scenes, and edited them together. When that finished, Wayne then went to Mascot, where he appeared in 3 serials, none of which were westerns. There was Shadow of the Eagle, in which he played a circus stunt pilot. The Hurricane Express, in which he was an airline pilot who is hunting down the man who murdered his engineer father. A lot of train action in that one. And his final one, The Three Musketeers, in which it's not Dumas's story, but it's about 3 French Foreign Legion members, dubbed the Three Musketeers, who help John Wayne, a military pilot, clear his name from a murder charge. And then he came to Lone Star. The Lone Star films are probably the ones that most people are familiar with. They played a lot on TV back in the 70s, at least in my area. So it was John Wayne Theater, and they would show the old Lone Stars. Wayne's very young and inexperienced, as he was in all of these, but he's growing as an actor at this point. And, of course, he would go from here to Republic when it got formed, where he would make a series of low-budget westerns. At one point, he was a member of the Three Musketeers, a popular series of 3 heroes that had a rotating roster of actors who played in it. Ironically, he replaced Robert Livingston. You may have remembered him from back when we did Riders of the Whistling Skull, where Livingston was getting popular, so they moved him into starring roles on his own, and Wayne came in to play Stony Brook. And it was only like a couple years later when Livingston returned to the role of Stony Brook, and Wayne left to go on where he would make his breakthrough western, John Ford's Stagecoach, and then continue on from there in many westerns, war films, a couple of Dirty Harry style cop films, and one where he played a secret agent hunting down commies in Hawaii, where he was teamed up with James Arnaz. Because when you think of super suave government agents, you think of John Wayne and James Arnaz. Anyway, getting to this film. The film opens with John meeting his Indian companion Yak, played by Yakima Canutt, who was also Wayne's stunt double at this time. They've been assigned to look into the murders of all the sheriffs at a town called Little Rock. They're Texas State Rangers, I think, or undercover government agents. But they learn of a stagecoach robbery. This is something that has been happening regularly. So Wayne, he's named John in this film, he goes and kind of outsmarts the criminals. It is a unique fashion.
Don't look back. Drop that gun and keep driving.
To say, the real robbers aren't too pleased when they find out what happened.
Throw down that bag.
You're too late. A lone rider beat you to it.
Yeah?
Rather economical the way they filmed that. Now this is a tragedy, but it does allow John, who was watching with Yak off in the distance, a chance to pull one of those standard daring Western rescues. How'd you like that transition? They did that a lot in the Lone Star Westerns. They would have him start one way, quickly pan the camera over, and he would be arriving where he needed to be. Luckily, only one of the drivers was unfortunately dead. The other one is wounded, and after they have taken him to the doctor, and Tom explains how he was just riding by when he saw the shooting, and he came in to see what he could do to help. And he's introduced to the sheriff, who is promptly shot from an empty street.
Look. See that smoke?
The bullet came straight on. But from where?
You might not recognize that man who spoke. That is George Gabby Hayes, sans his scruffy beard and with his false teeth in. Of course, he is probably best known as Roy Rogers' sidekick, Gabby, who had a scruffy beard. And he would go without his false teeth, giving him that very distinctive way he talked. Hayes played in most of the Lone Star films. He bounced back and forth between playing villains and playing good guys who helped Wayne. They lament that now no one's going to take the sheriff's job, but the Duke steps up and says he'll volunteer. Yak, who was keeping watch in the street, sees the two men who were robbing the stage and signals to John. John follows them into the saloon.
You needn't explain, boys. I know everything that has happened. Keep your eyes on this new sheriff. Watch every move and report to me in the morning.
After they leave, John slips in and does a quick search. Since that was a bust, he and Yak head out separately to go retrieve the money, knowing, because he had overheard them ordering to keep a watch on him, that he'll be followed. And then, when he knows they followed him, he has Yak and him trade horses, sending Yak back to town with the money while he takes the empty saddlebags. Why trade horses? I have no idea. I guess so that Knut could use his own horse to do the stunt. It's as good a theory as any.
It's empty.
That's not the stunt. This is the stunt. Pretty slick. Well, once getting back to town, they turn the money in, and the two henchmen arrive back to explain what happened and are ordered back to the hideout. Now, unbeknownst to them, they are trailed by Yak and John, and they discover the hideout is very close to Gabby Hayes' ranch. He may not know of this. He is one of the most upstanding citizens in the town. John leaves Yak on watch while he goes to tell this to Gabby. And we are also finally getting around to the heroine. Let's see. What is her name? Come on, Anita Matlock. Her Gabby Hayes is playing her uncle Matt Matlock. Anyway, John rides up.
Matlock?
How do you do?
Just wanted to tell you about my good luck. I found the express money near the scene of the holdup.
Well, that is good luck. Did you see any sign of the robbers?
Well, I can't make any promises right now, Mr. Matlock, but I hope to have the Shadow and his gang behind the bars in a very few days.
Well,
Behind the bars? Odd line reading. Also, I wonder why he didn't tell him about the outlaw gang hanging out near his ranch. Well, Matlock excuses himself to allow the young people to have a little time to themselves. And John gives Anita a gun for her own safety because things could get dangerous out here. Meanwhile, the gang is contacted by phone by the Shadow and told to ambush John when he leaves the ranch. But the Shadow did not count on Yak. Fortunately, the other henchman gets away, which leads to a short chase and a very awkward fight, as film fights as we know them today had not yet been created yet, or at least the filming technique of it. And so we get more of a odd wrestling match. Ooh, something for the ladies there. A young, in shape, open-shirted John Wayne. You're welcome. Capturing the two men, he takes them to jail, where they give the usual, "We'll be out of here by tomorrow, Sheriff." Yeah. Meanwhile, the Shadow has ordered his men to scare Anita off the ranch. So that doesn't quite work out the way he hoped it would. Good thing John gave her that gun. Good thing she knows how to use it. I think she'll do well on the ranch. While this was happening, John and Yak search that room where the men get their orders from.
Here it is. It's a fake safe. This must be where the Shadow gives his orders from.
Handle watch each on with your hook.
Well, this is interesting. It's a tunnel.
Unfortunately, I can't show you any of the scenes down in the tunnel. If you thought the scenes shot in the room were dark, that's nothing compared to the tunnel. You can't see anything. But basically, the tunnel leads to the center of the street and a ladder. You go up the ladder. The tree stump that sits in the middle of the street is hollow, with a hole pointed straight out so you can have a rifle shoot anyone on that end of the street. Mystery solved. John has a plan. It involves a saw. More on that later. The next morning, while talking with her uncle, Anita is offered a price on her half of the ranch that she owns with her uncle. He wants to buy her out and take over the whole thing. She's not sure she wants to sell. She rather likes the ranch. Meanwhile, John takes one of the prisoners to the secret room and forces him to have a conversation with the Shadow, learning of the plan to attack the town. John does the old switches hats with the henchman, because the henchman was told, make sure you walk him in the center of the street. He'll have someone take care of the rest. So, properly disguised as each other, John walks down the street while Yak puts the other part of their plan into action.
Take it easy, Parker. Don't move.
Getting their new prisoner to talk, we finally learn who, rather unsurprisingly, the Shadow is.
You got just one chance to live. Who's the Shadow?
Oh, don't shoot. I'll tell. It's...
Yep, it's Matlock. Like I said, no big surprise there. Wasn't a lot of suspects, really. And Hayes, being rather up in the credits, as he usually was, made sense. Well, we've got no time to dwell on that, because Anita's finding out he's not really her uncle.
Both your dad and uncle were killed. He took all your uncle's papers and his clothes and passed himself off in town as Matlock.
The sheriff must know about this, Jake. I'm going to tell him right now.
Okay, we're rushing to the conclusion, so everything seems to be happening really fast and quick. Anita gets caught trying to ride to town, and her nut uncle decides he'll use her as a hostage to keep from getting shot at during his big attack on the town, and has her thrown in the wagon they're using. Now, John knew about the attack because it was discussed when he had the henchman at gunpoint getting a message to his boss. So he reveals to the town that he is a lawman, and he deputizes the whole town. And in order to prevent them from getting confused at who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, they all get rid of their hats and tie white handkerchiefs on themselves. Then we head into a major shootout chase. After some furious riding and shooting, the Shadow, realizing the game's not going in his favor, he jumps on the wagon and takes it over, but as happens in these films, the inevitable. Best stunt in the whole film. Well, okay, it's not a stunt. That's obviously a miniature, but pretty impressive. I'm not sure it's actually from this film or not. It could have been a stock shot. But anyways, not to worry. Big John is on the case. As for the Shadow, he's found a canoe. Might have been the one Yak arrived in at the beginning of the picture. And he's making his way downstream. But once John's made sure Anita's okay, he and Yak head off and get their man. And now that that's all wrapped up, we jump forward a few years. John and Anita are married, living on the ranch with a son. And in very typical for the time, this film has been kind of racially insensitive to Native Americans. I mean, you've got a Caucasian playing an Indian, which was typical, but this goes way beyond that.
Yak and Papoose have high-use skookum fun.
You'll get a lot more than high-use skookum fun if you don't leave our child alone.
Oh, that is painful, that is. And the film was doing so well up till then. Well, now, the obvious reason they had John Wayne teamed with an Indian sidekick is that previous year, The Lone Ranger had premiered on radio. And it was huge. And obviously, as these types of films are made very quick turnaround. I mean, Wayne made something like 16 films in a span of like 3 years, 3 to 4 years. I mean, you know, these things were just churned out. Take maybe a week to film, be in the theaters a couple more weeks after that. You know, the post-production, and then the marketing, cutting prints and things. So yeah, they were quick to jump on the Lone Ranger bandwagon with this. There were other films and series that would pick up on that, like The Lone Rider, and I believe The Durango Kid. At least in that they had masked heroes. This is a pretty standard film for this series. Wayne doesn't appear quite as embarrassed in this one as he did when he did the Singing Sandy films. Yes, John Wayne, before Gene Autry, was a singing cowboy. Except that his voice was dubbed. Man couldn't sing himself. And he always looked embarrassed. If you've ever seen shots of that film, where he's walking down the street for the shootout and he's singing, which is unnerving his opponent. Only in the 30s. Little anecdote here. Now, my wife is not a big fan of Westerns. She's seen some. They're okay. But she's rather amused by these when I watch them. There was one where Tom Mix, it was his last film I was watching, and he had a hat similar in height to the one Wayne is wearing in here. And she said, now that's a 10-gallon hat with attitude. And yeah, those are 10-gallon hats with attitude. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's well acted for what it is. I mean, you know, the bad guys are bad, the good guys are good. There's plenty of good action. Yakima Canutt's stunts are awesome. And you got that great thing with the stagecoach going over the cliff. Not enough spooky stuff. I mean, really, there's only the thing about being shot by someone who couldn't have shot him because there's no one there. And it is a clever reveal on how that was done. But, and you know, having a villain called the Shadow, and he's just a voice behind the screen, you know. But I would have liked a little more emphasis on the supernaturalness of it. But other than that, it's a pretty standard odor, as they would call it. And it is kind of fun to see John Wayne back in his early days when he was still pretty good looking and thin. You know, he was still in shape from his football days. Kind of like Elvis in his early 60s movies when he'd just gotten out of the Army and was in his shape from his Army training before his tendency to eat tended to bloat his body. Kind of like Wayne, who hefty eater. And from the 50s forward, he packed on weight. But here he was, young, fit, good looking. Not quite a good actor yet, but he's getting there. That's really all about this one. Please hit like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
I'm afraid that never can happen.
The Shadow is clever. His men are the most desperate criminals ever banded together.
How do you know?
Why, from the cold-blooded manner in which they operate.
Oh, I see. But I still think I can do it.